Next up, we're going to have Francis Odom and Michael Silva are going to come up here, and they're going to actually do a demo. This is going to be very interesting. So we're going to see how this all works. So just so you know who Francis is, he's got a really large following on LinkedIn. He's got his own research organization. If you're not checking out his stuff, you should go figure it out and go look and see what he's publishing, because it's really, really good. We've also got a Marine Corps guy coming up here, Michael Silva. Me being prior Navy, of course, I should hand him some crayons or something so he has something to eat. But, you know, that's how we are. But what we're going to do is we're going to talk about a demo. We're going to see what's going on. They're going to show us how easy this actually is to move things between different organizational sort of structures to get folks into the understanding of what a compromise looks like. I love it when people do demos because there's always concept and theory and data, but the moment folks are willing to stand up and show you this is what research does when you apply it to the problem, this is where we get some really good insights. So please help me in welcoming Michael and Francis.
Thank you. And just to get the first question out of the way, purple is the best flavor. So just so you do know.
Awesome. All righty. Great. So before we go into the live demo that we're actually going to go over, I'm going to speak through a number of NHI attacks that have happened over the last couple of months. And then once we go over those attacks, Michael will actually go through an actual demo for us. So my name's Francis and Michael. And so I'm just going to start off first by saying the evolution of NHIs are really quite fascinating to explore. I will say, when we think about identity as a space in general, I think historically, identity, first of all, started with the problem of authentication and IAM. And we gradually evolved to PAM, and then obviously IGA. And now we're at an interesting intersection point whereby the problem is going from humans over to machines themselves. And so what we do see on here is humans with the rise of SaaS applications, API tokens, and service accounts that are very foundational to how applications communicate with each other. We do have situations where humans are accepting NHI as part of their processes. And as well, we also have a case where humans, developers, are also creating these NHIs themselves, and they're exploding in and across an enterprise stack. And then in the near future, and quite frankly, we're seeing this in some really forward-leaning organizations whereby NHIs are going to be creating their own NHIs. And so when you think about that for a second, we're really in a situation whereby, as we've mentioned a variety of stats today, for every 1,000 employees, you're going to have about 20,000 non-human identities. Like, think about that for a second. And then that's just for an organization with 1,000 employees. What about if you have an organization with 2,000 employees or 3,000 employees? Think about that rapid expansion about that problem. And so that's the current situation we do find ourselves with modern enterprises. And so what do we see here is really a situation whereby NHI attacks have been on the rise. A lot of them are not reported. However, when we think about some that actually have been reported, over the last 12 months, we've had over 13 different attacks. Would you believe that? Right? And these are just ones that have to be reported, right? There are regulations around that actually mandate companies to publicly disclose these reports themselves. However, there are so many of these that are going under the radar. So I'll just maybe spotlight on 4 attacks. Probably won't go into a lot of detail. Happy to answer questions on them later on. But I think these are 4 notable attacks that actually have maybe some of you have heard of, probably some of you haven't heard of. But for example, we had the Snowflake attack, and this is just over a year ago with the Cloudflare attack. Maybe I'll start with that one first of all, whereby you had attackers who leveraged credentials from a previous breach and were able to access Cloudflare's Atlassian's suite. They breached their suites where they had access to lots of NHIs across their Jira and across their Confluence accounts. That was quite massive. You also have a situation with Snowflake as well. And for any of you who knows or who've used Snowflake in any way, I mean, these are, Snowflake especially, where you have hundreds of instances are actually filled with lots of service accounts. It's quite massive. And what we had was a situation whereby a malware, an infostealer malware, was actually used to actually access a number of customers' accounts on a Snowflake. And then attackers had access to hundreds of instances there. we also have the Hugging Face attack, whereby attackers also were able to access some tokens, specifically within the Spaces platform as well. And a lot of these are used to protect AI models. And most recently, we had the AWS attack. I think some of you might have heard about this. Probably wasn't really spotlighted on the news as an NHI attack, but really when you look closer into that attack, what you had was a situation whereby attackers were actually trying to breach AWS, and they were actually able to have access to a misconfigured environment, and through that, were able to get access to over 230 million endpoints. And so what you actually do find with a lot of these NHI attacks is they're increasing in frequency, and especially over the last months, and it's just coming on, and I think, God forbid, well, who knows, we might have another even bigger one over the next few months. So I think we're at this critical junction point whereby organizations are starting to realize the importance of how do we get really good inventory, how do we have good visibility around this, and how do we actually go about solving this problem. And so with that, I'm going to pass it over to Michael, who's now actually going to go over an attack for us.
Awesome. Thank you, Francis. So what we're going to do today is actually, I have a recording of a live attack that I do. It's a little bit high level to fit into the time today. But I'm going to show it. No special tools, no special way going around it. How I, as an attacker, would actually go through, if I found a token, what would I do? And in this use case, we chose a company called Square CD, which we decided not to like on today's agenda, and go after them, right? So what we're actually going to do, and I'll step back here a little bit because it's going to be on both screens. It's going to be a lot of code in here, right? So, but I'm going to try to highlight as much as I can. But we're going to do a few things, right? You'll see the steps that we're going to do. We're going to gain access one place inside the system. We're going to lateral move across different environments, across SaaS, across cloud, multiple SaaS vendors. And then we're going to steal, conceal, and persist, right? We want to make sure we're going to get something out of it so we can have financial gain. We're going to conceal what we did, and then we're going to see if we can continue this and start rolling down the road. So go ahead and start the video. Perfect. So what we did is we actually researched a Square CD. We found their GitHub organization, and we started looking at all their developers. Started scanning their public repositories, and we saw that there was a public repository that was open for one of their developers called CI/CD process. Inside CI/CD process, we're going to run an open source tool called GitLeaks, and we're actually going to see if are there any tokens exposed in this code. Luckily for us, there was, right? We can see that there's an AWS access key, and we can see that by the prefix, right? Tokens and keys have prefixes, set lengths that gives us an idea of where does this key actually go to. So let's see if we can go ahead and figure out if we can actually describe this key. So we're going to go ahead and try to describe this file to see if we can actually see the key in context. And what's going to happen is we're going to not be able to see this key, which is a very interesting way, but it's a deeper thought where we're actually looking at a branch that has not been merged to main. So we actually are looking down into a different branch, which would be this Jenkins connector here, where SaaS and DAS tools that you typically have are scanning your main branches, right? We don't want to look at everything that's not main, it's not merged yet, right? It doesn't really matter to us. So now that we're going to go ahead, we can go ahead and look at the commit instead of switching to that branch. And when we look at the commit, we're going to actually see the secret value of the key. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to see the two keys we have here. So we're going to see the AWS access key, which is the AKIA, and then we're going to see the secret value. So now we have two items that we need to go ahead and configure an AWS profile and see if it works. Right? Let's see if this is something that could actually get to an AWS environment. So we're going to escape out of here. We're going to go ahead and open up a AWS configure for time's sakes. I've already configured it. Right? I pasted in the AWS access key. I pasted in the secret. We're going to see if we can go ahead and access an AWS environment using this key we found in the public repo. To do that, we're going to use the caller identity, which is a built-in process for AWS, basically the who am I of AWS. So when we run the get caller identity against this new profile we just set up, we're going to find out that it is active. It's active, and it goes to a user account that's called Square CD, CI/CD, SA. We have a service account. Great. So first thing we want to do is try to see, can we see other non-human identities with this service account? So we're going to go ahead and try to list secrets inside Secret Manager. Bingo, where we got them. So we have two secrets that we can see inside here. We have Square CI/CD Slackbot We also have a prod token. Since this one is named very closely to the service account, we're going to try it first, right? We're going to see if we can actually describe what this CI/CD Slack bot secret is. If we can see that secret, now we have a new way to go somewhere else inside the environment. So to describe it, we're going to run just a quick command for Java query that's going to actually see, hey, list out just the secret value. I don't need all the other mumbo jumbo that comes with it. Just give me the value. And perfect, we got it. And this is actually a Slack bot token, or a connection token for Slack that we have in our AWS Key Manager. We can actually tell that without the notification here by the prefix, XOX, that's Slack. Right? I have P for user, I have B for bot. So now I know I have two different types of keys that we can, and luckily for us, we can go ahead and move over to Postman, and we could actually test this against the Slack public API. Slack has created a public API similar to the Who Am I for AWS to say, hey, where does this key go to, right? So we're going to copy over both the bot token and the user token into our Postman, which is just a way to test API calls against the environment. We'll go ahead and we'll save that. And then we'll go over to our collections. We'll set it to active. We're going to go to our collection. We're going to use Slack test token. We can see slack.com auth test. We can see we have the user token set here first. We're going to go ahead and look at the bot token first. We're going to see what can the bot actually do. We're going to see in the body, we got a success. And we can actually see that this goes to Square CD's Slack environment. So now we have a token, we know it's active, and now we know the workspace. There's another really cool piece that we get back from this, which is a header called XOAuth scopes. This tells me what can it do. So now I can see inside here are the actual permissions I can do against that workspace with this key, right? And we can see that we have a bot token. I'm going to go for the user token next, because user tokens are typically more generally available, more permission side Slack versus a bot, which is typically set up for a single account or a single channel. I can see there's something called group history, which is a very misleading OAuth scope, which means I can actually read private DM history, right? So I'm going to go ahead and say, OK, well, let's go ahead and see, can we actually see channels? OK, great. We have the general channel here. We have the dev channel, right? So we can actually see that it's a live user, live token. It's got access to a lot of different channels inside of Slack. Well, why do I care about Slack? Why would I even come over here when I was already in their AWS environment as a service account, right? Because I know there's humans still involved in this process, so I'm going to search all the messages for other AWS keys. So I'm going to come in here and say, I have my prefix that I'm looking for all different messages in here. Are there any more? Can I get lucky? So I'm going to hit send, and OK, we got a result, right? We have one result here, and I'll kind of drag this up. And what we're going to see is a message that we've probably seen in every organization across the world, which is a nice message from one user to another. Says, hey, here's the secret. Please delete this after you're done. Guess what never happened? Never got deleted. So now my lucky day, I have a new AWS access key and a new secret, right? So I can come in here, and I'm going to create a new AWS profile. What can this one do inside of AWS? So I'm going to come back. I'm going to create the new profile for profile 2 inside here. And again, for the sake of time, I've already copied and pasted the keys in for the profile. So we'll just kind of go through and pointing out that it's the same new key, right? And that's the key point too, right? Also see that's a new key. Check against the first one. See, did I just get the same access key again, or is it new? So I'm going to run the caller identity again, see if I get a little bit luckier this time, see if I have something new, see if it's even active, right? That's the first part I want to know. And this will be the dreaded part where, yay, AWS admin, right? Some sort of admin maintenance role, something of this nature that I'm actually able to do something much higher, right? So the fact that I had admin in the name, I probably have at least IAM read. So I'm going to go ahead and list what permissions do I have with this role. I have S3 full access. I also have secret manager read write, which means I can read and create my own new secrets if I wanted to, right? So I'm going to go ahead and clear this. I'm going to describe the secrets again. We already saw the CI/CD process. We did see another one out there. Let's see if this one can see even more, or if we see the same two, and then also see if we can actually describe the new token down here, which is going to GitHub, where we first started, for a prod token for a personal access token. So We're going to go ahead and do the same thing again where we did a Java query with this new profile to see, can we read it? Can we see it? Yes, we can. Right again, prefix tells us where it's going to go. I don't care about the description. You can tell me all day. I already know. Right? It's going to go to GitHub. It's a personal access token. Now I have my token. We're going to go back to Postman. We've now moved from GitHub, AWS, Slack. Now we're going back to GitHub. So now we're going back to GitHub. I already saw all your public repos because I've been researching you. Now, I want to hit a flag for, show me all the private repos that this one can see. So now if I start running against your private repos, these are the ones I have not seen yet. I've not scanned for any sort of code. And I see a fun one right here. First hit, prod app. Right? This is going to be the one that I'm going to now say, OK, let's copy this. Let's take this prod app, and let's describe what's inside. Let's see if it's just poorly named or if I got lucky. So we're going to go ahead and make a new variable for the repo name of prod app. So we can go ahead and see what are the contents inside. Right? So once we go ahead and go to get repo, and we're going to list contents, and we're going to see what we can actually see under here. We're going to see some file names, right? .editor config, not fun, right? We're going to see a lot of files, probably our GitHub ignore, probably a license file, a README could be fun, right? Actually, nobody does from that point of view. I see my license file, I see my README, right? I'm going to go a little bit further down. I got a package, great. But we're going to see one here in a second that's going to make me very excited and that I've paid off my work. One, scripts, right? That may have more tokens in it. So I'm going to go from there. And then we also have the ability to see source. I have source code, right? So now I'm going to go ahead and, in the access time, go ahead and blow through this and say, I'm going to download the source code, right, and go through what we're actually going to see. But we're, now we're going to persist something else. Now we need to go from, we've made money, let's conceal and persist. So I'm going to do everyone's favorite task inside of AWS and start messing around in S3 buckets. I'm going to make this look like a data breach, make it look like a data attack, make it look like something it's not what it is. So I start coming through here just to set up alarms, set up whistles, make it seem from that point of view. But I see a couple of good folders, or a couple of good buckets I have access to. Customer data and backup do not delete. So if we start looking through, right, oh great, customer payments, customer agreements, this could be useful. So we'll go ahead and take that one. But let's go ahead and see what's in the backup do not delete. This is going to be our interesting one. So inside the interesting one, we actually see customer connector keys. So now we've gone from just trying to set up alarms to, all right, let's hurry up and get this. Right, so we're going to go ahead and see if there's something else in customer connector keys, poorly named folder, or something interesting. So we're going to see JSON files with actual customer names connected to them. It can't be this easy, right? So we're going to go ahead and see, let's go ahead and download this important customer key just for the point here and actually see what's inside. So we're going to go ahead and download this customer key, and we're going to actually see what it can see. Like, is it actually a key, or is this just something that's poorly named? So when we download it, we're going to go ahead and cat the keys here, right? So we have important customers, our JSON that we've downloaded, and we're going to cat it out. And we have a key, right? So now we have a key that can actually connect to other environments. If we read through this, we'll actually see it goes to Google. So now we're going to GCP. So we're actually going to take this key, see if it's active against anything in GCP. So if now we start going ahead and activating the account using the key that we downloaded, we got a service account that actually works for BigQuery, right? So now we can see that it actually has all these other pieces here. So now we've moved from attacking Square CD to attacking Square CD's customers, right? So we moved into a supply chain attack. We don't want to lose this access, right? They're going to find out that we got to this file. So what the last part we're going to do here is actually see which, how many projects we're in, do some recon from that point of view. But we're actually going to create our own account inside this GCP customer's environment. And we've given ourselves role editor, right? So now we've moved on from just attacking Square CD to turning them into a supply chain attack. Perfect. So to recap what we did, right, we jumped around between GitHub, AWS, Slack. We stole source code. We stole some S3 data. And we've actually gone through and turned them into a supply chain attack. The other part from that is you'll see a lot of different data coming out, and no one's coming after me. No one's looking for my data. No one's looking for more for my keys. There's been some recent reports throwing canary tokens out there, seeing how fast they get picked up. The longest one that lasted was about 127 hours before it's picked up by a bot, right? Some were less than an hour, some were less than 20 seconds, right, that are out there. It's not just the fact that you believe your crown jewels are protected and you're protecting them from that point of view, and that it doesn't matter that we don't apply the same security elsewhere. No one's in your production meeting, no one's in your sprint planning. They don't know what your crown jewel is. They're scanning everything. They're trying to figure out what they can get, what they can persist, and go from there. So that is it. I think we are up on time. We are. But I will be at the table if you guys have any questions, and we can answer from there.